Oh, hi everyone, and welcome to this midsection of the.
Hi everyone,
I can
and
hear myself through
welcome
your
to this
speaker.
midsection of the.
I
Let
must.
me
That must be
fix that.
Twitch, right?
Yeah. I forgot to turn it back over to my headset.
There we go. Thank you. Yeah, we're here to talk about blindness and partially sighted accessibility in the TTRPG community, or as we've coined it, creating blind spots in the TTRPG community. Temple has joined me. Temple is a consultant who will help you make your things more accessible. Hey, Temple. Hey, who are you, bud?
I am BlindTemple at BlindTemple on Twitter. I help people with their accessibility needs to play TTRPGs and D&D and all sorts of fun stuff, and just accessibility stuff in general. I find games for the blind that are looking for it through my network of Twitter friends, and I'm just that blind guy.
Yeah. So before we launch into like get the hot irons out and start pulling you over them, we should talk about a couple of things. First of all, we do have a little bit of a disclaimer. We realize that no community is a monolith, and oh no, that's not your name. That's why. I put Blind Spot instead of Blind Temple.
Nah, that's my dog.
There we go. So we understand that no community is a monolith. We're going to draw on as much experience as we can from Temple today. But we understand that his views may not be necessarily representative of the wider blind or partially sighted community. However, we hope that his experiences and insights will be useful to you all who are trying to make your games or your products for games more accessible. And really that leads straight into the first thing that I wanted to discuss with you is some of the stigma around disability and blindness and things. So like, for example, just getting questions for this interview, I found a lot of trepidation in people who were like, who didn't want to ask any questions that might not be PC, you know,
Right.
and there was the thing I got from the people I was just discussing it with to prepare for this interview was like immediate fear to address the topic. You know what I mean?
Right. That's why I do what I do. On the 18th of every month, I do an Ask Me Anything on Twitter because I've found there's so many in the blind community that constantly get asked, how did you lose your sight? I get asked that at least a couple of times a week, and it gets old.
Yeah.
You know, and people get tired of having to, and it's personal information in a lot of cases, and people don't want to talk about it. But also, I understand the other side of it is that most people don't know anyone that's blind.
Yeah.
You know, they go through their whole life, you know, and it's unusual to see somebody walking with a white cane. I mean, when I'm out going around and, you know, my friends are helping me go someplace or something, they never see anybody else, you know, that's out there with a white cane. I'm all alone out there. So I understand that people will have questions and are just curious, and they don't know what the boundaries are, you know, what's too far and, you know, what are reasonable questions.
Yeah.
That's why I answer all these questions is it's nobody's going to learn how to deal with this or how to approach people unless somebody tells them. And, you know, ignorance is the enemy, not the people that are asking questions that offend somebody.
Oh, also, Temple, have you pressed start captioning?
I believe I did. Let me go back and check.
It's not picking up, but there's no.
Well, that's because I'm so good. I don't need.
Yeah, you're loud enough, right? You'll break through those accessibility.
I don't.
barriers.
Yeah, I'm not using a microphone. Let's see. There, I hit it again. I turned it off and turned it back on. Did that work? Hello, am I captioning?
Doesn't seem to be working at the minute.
Huh.
I've definitely. I mean, it definitely is picking something up because is it captioning for you?
Let me look. I don't know. I turned off my thing of the stream so that I wouldn't.
I mean, on the web captioner app, is it?
Yeah, it says it is. Yeah,
Oh.
there it is. I don't know why.
Well, don't know what's happening with the web captioner there, people. Sorry about that. We'll just have to carry on without it. But yeah, there is a real stigma. I remember when we first started talking, and we met. I believe we were sorting out things. One of the first memorable interactions I remember is we were sorting out a character sheet for another community member who was trying to get some tools for completely no sight, you know.
Right.
And I remember we were talking about that a lot. But I remember you said, I said, oh, well, what should I call you for short? And you were like, you can just call me Blind. And I immediately just didn't like. I was like, I wasn't sure if I should feel comfortable with that, you know, like.
Yeah. Well, I get that. I don't believe in turning words that aren't slurs into slurs.
Yeah.
And blind really isn't one of those. That's just what I am. You know, the blind community mostly owns that word.
Yeah.
You know, and I've taken a little bit of heat from people that are totally blind because I'm, you know, visually impaired. I have a little bit of sight left for calling myself that. But after all the surgeries and all the pain and everything that I went through trying to keep this little bit of sight, I feel I've earned the right to call myself whatever the hell I want to call myself. So.
Yeah, and we really appreciate you coming along as well and answering these questions. I appreciate that you do that Ask Me Anything every month as well, because I do think it's something that needs to be, you know, normalized a little bit, just so we can all get along a little better. And so yeah, I do have some questions from the community. One of the first ones that people are interested in is what's it like to find a game as a blind person?
It is very difficult.
Yeah.
I've gone to my local hobby shop before and asked to join a game that was obviously open and been told no, there was no spots left. I went and sat on the other side of the room to wait for, you know, an open game, and 2 other people came in and were immediately allowed into the game. Because they assume, there's so many people assume that when you have a white cane that you're totally blind. So, you know, they just accepted them, figuring I couldn't tell, and went on. And there's a lot of gatekeeping there. There's a lot of gatekeeping for anyone with disability. But it's something that is changing. You know, there's D&D and TTRPGs are the perfect medium for the sighted and the blind to participate in something together, because all it takes is imagination, and technology and aids can overcome the lack of sight, and then you just play your character just like anyone else.
Yeah, I know one of the things that we've struggled with a little is things like the technology that we use to play online, but you know, it doesn't really affect. You can get around any of those things fairly easily, and you know, I mostly find that I'm not sure this is true of everyone, but you in particular, you if there's something that you need, you've already got it sorted. If you need to roll physical dice that you can read, you do, you know. And also, what about like online tools and things like that? Can you use like the Roll20 game finder or things like that?
Well, Roll20 is so inaccessible that I don't, just because so many groups I've found that I've tried to join that way rely heavily on Roll20 and the map and the, you know, all the rolling and everything. And especially random groups that you pick up with, they don't understand that I need to roll dice here on my desk rather than, because I can't, you know, see when I do it and what happens on the app. But the technology is getting better. D&D Beyond is just huge leaps and bounds better than what it was before that.
Yeah, you're seeing an improvement there. Can you tell the difference between something that is built ground up with like accessibility in mind and something that's and something that's upgraded?
The perfect example are PDFs. PDFs have accessibility functions in them, but almost no one uses them. And they're a huge pain in the ass to go back in and add after you've built whatever the PDF is. If people do it from the beginning, it's much more accessible and much easier. And I run across that all the time. It's like, oh, we're accessible, we have a PDF, but the accessibility functions were never turned on. So like for me to see something to read it, it has to be very large, a very large font. The background has to be black and the text has to be white. Well, on a normal PDF that hasn't been set up, you have to go through and reset each page that way as you change the page.
Yeah.
If it's been set up ahead of time, it just naturally scrolls through the whole thing. And, telling people, well, it zooms, that's no aid if I can't see it because of the glare from the white of the
I was
screen.
having a discussion with someone. I can't remember if it was earlier or yesterday because all my days are blurring into one. But I was having a discussion with them, and the quote they said was, if you have to use a third-party app to make something work, then that's not good design. And
Absolutely.
that track. And I remember I used to do a bit of coding myself. I used to be an engineer before I got into all this, and I know exactly what you mean. Like, it's bad enough returning to your own code and trying to update it without doing anything new. Even worse, trying to update someone else's code when you go back to it, and especially if they don't take notes. Well, I mean, this could very easily turn into a coder gripe section. But
well, it's getting better.
I remember we ended up on that first interaction. We ended up ditching VTTs altogether for the character sheet in the end, and just creating an Excel spreadsheet. And that's still the advice I give. I occasionally get people message me based off of that stream asking how to set it up for blind people. Yeah. And I still recommend the same thing. Just set up an Excel sheet.
Yeah. Just a little plug here. If you go to the Knights of Braille on Twitter, they have various forms of character sheets for the blind that are excellent.
That actually ties into one of our other questions, actually. I think I've spelt that right. Oh, that's except my command's not working properly. I've just realized this whole day it's been saying target ID. Sorry, everyone. All of my commands got deleted when I reinstalled Windows the other day, so I'm building them back up. But one of the questions that we did get was people was asking about access to source books and whether Braille was a good alternative, and how easy it was to get your hands on that if it is.
Well, just now the source books for D&D are being made into Braille by Dots RPG at Dots RPG on Twitter. They make Braille dice, and they're working with Wizards of the Coast to turn out a proper accessible set. But you don't find it in anything else. I mean, in my state, you can send off any book that you have to the Library for the Blind, and they will turn it into a digital copy or into a Braille copy for you free and send it back to you.
Oh, really? That's really cool.
Yeah. But it could take, I sent off a history book I had that was old, that it was too old to have electronic, and it took 1.5 years.
Oh, geez. Okay. Yeah.
So, it's underfunded and it's, hard to do, but they're making progress. The best source material, though, is digital source material, because people don't realize that the blind especially use tons of electronics to cope with the situation. For everything from screen readers so that they can participate in Twitter or they can play games or whatever, to like me, I have a 32-inch monitor and I sit here, fairly close to it, and I can see well enough to function in the, in what it is. But we have to have that technology available. That's a problem. There's a lot of people that don't allow technology at their table.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of misassumptions when they see the blind using technology. Like, I don't know if you saw it, but there was that picture traveling around Facebook of the blind lady standing there with her cane looking at her cell phone. And people captioned it, "What's wrong with this picture?" And then they were making fun of her for faking being blind, which is the furthest thing from the truth. She needs that phone to do stuff. I use my phone as a magnifier. I turn on the camera, I zoom it in as far as it can, and then I can look at books or at medicine labels or whatever I need to do.
Yeah.
But people see that kind of thing and assume that you're faking.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess like ableism in general must be.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's one of the things that I think a lot of people are still learning about. It's a lot of behaviors are I think a lot of us are probably aware that we have some bad habits and bad behaviors, and it's just figuring out how to move away from those to new things. And for most
Yeah.
people, it's just having the will to do it.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it's just mostly it's just ignorance. And if people get educated and learn about what it is and realize that they're actually harming people, they fix it and they move on. And that's why I'm here.
Yeah. And by the way, chat, we are going to be opening the session to questions and answers. So if you do have any questions as we're going through, feel free to fire them up in the chat there, and I'll make note of them, and we'll probably ask them at the end unless they're particularly relevant to the current topic. Feel free to fire them in. We'd appreciate that. So on the topic of accessibility, as you know, at the moment I'm going through a period of I've been updating lots of policies and things recently.
Yeah.
Are there any accessibility do's and don'ts? Are there any things that seem like really good accessibility things from an external point of view, but when you actually try and use it, it's not as good as you might think?
I've run into that quite a bit, and it would seem obvious, but I always tell people when they ask, what's the number one thing I can do to help somebody that's blind or whatever, and the thing is just simply ask them what they need and then provide it. Don't assume that because there are literally thousands of different types of blindness. There's no one fix for everything. So if you just, like most things in life, if you just communicate and then act upon it, you can figure it out. But there's no one thing that's going to be a fix-all or, that works for everybody.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, I suppose, as well. Like our little disclaimer mentions, that there's no one, the same way that not one person's views represent the entire community. There's also not one fix for everything.
Exactly.
Another thing that we come across a little bit is racing, competing with different things, what's more important, accessibility for the deaf or the blind? Well, no, they should be equal. That.
Accessibility for everybody should be equal.
Yeah.
And that's too. I'm not. I don't have a degree in accessibility or disability issues. I'm just telling people what I've experienced and what I know from dealing with it. It's just from my perspective. And you can ask 100 different people with a disability and you'll get 100 different answers. And you just have to treat people with respect and listen to them.
Yeah. Empathy is one of those things that we could also talk about for a long time. I know, particularly in business, just wasn't something that you're always thinking about numbers. You're never thinking about the people that actually attain those numbers.
Yeah.
But so are there any particularly good TTRPG experiences that you had recently? Is there anything anything that's stood out as not only not I don't mean a good role play moment or anything like that, but I mean anything that stood out to you as a really great accessibility thing? You've mentioned Knights of Braille and Dots RPG.
Yeah.
Is there anything? Tell us some good things.
One of the best is I've been teaching my nephews and nieces how to play D&D, and they range from 13 to 10. And my nephew, the oldest one, has started running a campaign for me. And without even thinking about it, he just automatically works in my sight issues into what it is, what's going on, and describes something so that it's more suited for me to understand it now than, he doesn't use stuff around us that he points to and says, okay, it's like this, he takes the time to describe it and everything. And the fact that he's picked up on that on his own without me, I haven't taught him how to do accessibility stuff. He's
Yeah.
just picked up on it from me doing it. Now that after I've noticed that, though, I've started, running the stuff and explaining it to the kids as I go about accessibility stuff. Because, like the title of this thing, I have blind spots too. It's hard to get away from. I was sighted for 45 years before I lost my sight, and it's hard to get away from that. You get into a rut, of thinking one way, and but yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah, I suppose that's something that may slip your mind as well. Like quite often I find myself, I'll say I was like that thing from that movie.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
without even thinking.
All the time, I'll forget I'm blind because I don't use my white cane around the house. I know where everything's at, and nobody moves anything. And I'll go out of the house. Well, back when we could leave the house, we would go and I would forget my cane laying on the table, and we would get someplace, and all of a sudden I don't have my cane and I have to guide off of whoever drove me. And I'm like somebody walking through a live minefield because I don't have my security blanket of having that cane to tap ahead of me with. And it's funny how you just, you get used to something.
Yeah. And thank you very much, whoever just donated there, $100 donation. Thank you very much. I hope you're finding today educational. Yeah, hopefully, thank you. Yeah, do you, so have you tried that? So like, let's go back to our example with the game shop. Have you,
Right.
Is it, no, this is where I worry about being a piece. It's going back to the stigma thing again, but I'm just going to soldier on.
Okay.
Have you ever tried like just, not, and I don't mean trying it, but I mean tried to like find your way to the table by perhaps leaving the cane behind and then just seeing if your accessibility tools will level things out, or is that something that's just so far out of possibility?
Oh, like go there and not allow them to know that I'm blind.
Well, no, not necessarily not allow them to know, but I mean just like maybe just pull out the accessibility tools when you sit down. Just surprise them a little bit.
Yeah. No, I really haven't. I'm very upfront with people.
Yeah.
When I do it, I tell them, I don't think it's fair to spring something on people, you know, and I don't want people to have that image of blind people that, I fooled you into allowing me at your table.
Yeah, that's exactly. I knew as I was asking the question. As I was saying it, I was like, yeah, no, this isn't. But yeah.
And don't worry about what questions you ask. You're not going to offend me. Any honest question trying to seek information, it's not going to offend me.
Yeah. I mean, we were doing we were going to do an event last month or the month before. God, how long's the quarantine been going on now?
Years.
Yeah, I think it was 2021 if you remember that year. But we were going to do this maximum inclusion event in London, and it was going to be all for kids with various things that stop them from being included. Could be disabilities, could be upbringing, language barriers, racial barriers,
right.
Or perceived barriers, whatever it is, anything that excludes them or makes them feel excluded. Unfortunately, it got cancelled because obviously the pandemic happened and a lot of those kids were immunocompromised. Right. But I couldn't believe the amount of extra that we were doing to make it accessible. Just little things like having.
Yeah.
And I mean, tools for everyone, not just the blind.
Yeah.
We did get some Braille character sheets, but like we had to find a company that would print them, and then because it was a charity thing, they were willing to do it for free. But I couldn't imagine how much it would be to, actually get these things printed, and finding character sheets for dyslexic people, with it's the I was surprised by the amount of work it took, like, because I felt like it should have been a lot easier. I feel like the barriers maybe were there unnecessarily. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I know one of the biggest barriers I've had at setting down places, especially places where I'm not used to playing, is plugins. I said, like, we have a lot of electronics. Well, you got to plug those in, but there's so many places that they don't have their setup arranged around the fact that I need to plug in. I can't play without my laptop. I have to have it open so that I can see, or some kind of computer to see the character sheets. And if I don't have a plug-in, I'm going to play for about an hour and 45 minutes, and then my battery's going to die, and I'm going to be doing it from memory after that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, it's the problem is a lot of times accessibility needs take a back seat to economics. They're trying to build things for as cheap as possible for the largest number of people, and anybody that's a smaller subset of that may not be as big a paying customer as the majority, they get left behind. And it's a real shame, because those people donate to those businesses, and they spend their money too, and and there's laws to protect people to offer that, and too many times they get ignored as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I can imagine. I think as well there's like a special kind of benefit as well to providing those sort of things, just from the way you're perceived as a business. Like as a customer with a choice of 2 game stores, and that one goes out of their way to accommodate for a disabled person, whatever disability needs they have, and another one absolutely will not. I personally would be tempted to go towards the one that does make their store accessible.
Yeah.
And then you get into the problem, I suppose, of marketing it as well. Because you don't want to be like this stream, for example. I don't want to be marketing it as, look, Blind's here.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's it's a tricky thing. And like I say, often when you don't have interaction with a thing, you don't realize the problems that come with it. Like I say, interacting with all of these different disability tools at this recent thing we were going to do, I was surprised by how much needed to be changed to make things accessible.
Yeah.
So
well, and it's usually little things. It's not like you have to go in and totally restructure the building in order to to adapt to people. It's not that hard to build a ramp. It's not that hard to have plugins for the blind, or to have someone doing sign language. It's not that difficult. It's just knowing that the need is there and then fulfilling it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess sometimes that stuff could be arranged case by case. Well, I mean, it would have to be case by case, as we say, because everyone's different. But I mean, when you have some time to prepare, it shouldn't be that bad.
Yeah. Well, usually the accessibility needs are fairly straightforward and simple. It's the view of some that they're making these huge sacrifices for the blind, or for somebody, and it's really not the case. It's simple things that if somebody asks you, can you do this to help me, you just do it and go on, and it's no big deal.
Yeah. And it's one of it's an interesting thing as well, because I'm just thinking about our own setup. And for example, one of the things that I could do to make my stream more accessible would be to try and find another VTT, a more accessible VTT.
Yeah, I haven't found one yet. You asked me about if there was one out there, and I've yet to find one that was that accessible.
Yeah, still.
Once again, it's just something that people don't think to make.
Yeah.
And it's getting better. I was really impressed to find out, it was a couple of weeks ago when we were doing Humblewood, that they had changed Roll20 to where now the high contrast worked on the character sheet, so I could actually see my character sheet on that. I still can't see it well enough to do anything with it, but I can,
it's better
actually read what's on there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, you only have to take if any of you in chat fancy a little exercise, you can just type in the simplest of accessibility like searches, and strolling through the forums, you can see you know, the requests and things. And I know one of the things was trying to get high contrast mode in the chat window, so you can see what's output. And I'm not just talking about I don't want to focus on any one VTT here. We use Roll20, so that's, and it is our VTT of choice. That's the main reason I haven't moved off it, is because I'm really good at it. You know, I've learned all the code and everything, so I don't want to take all that knowledge and just, you know, especially as there's not a great alternative. And I'm hoping that, like all companies, I generally find with companies, if you have a little faith in them, they tend to come through eventually.
Yeah.
And I hope it'll be the same as with Roll20. And the more that you ask, and that's the thing, you need to be doing these sorts of things. You need to be talking about it. You need to be asking for it, and then it comes, and then it's more likely to come through, right?
Well, I know, like D&D Beyond has been wonderful at working with the blind community. They've really, you know, come through in a big way, and Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah.
You know, I worked with Greg Tito on a character. He was playing a blind character on one of their shows, and he contacted me, and we talked for like an hour over the phone and helping him, you know, get that set up and everything so that he could do it with sensitivity and do it right.
Oh my goodness. Can we drill into that? You carry on your point, but I'd love to afterwards talk about what it'd be like to play a blind character. That'd be great.
Oh, yeah. And ironically enough, I've never played a blind character. But, you know, it's like, you know, an auto mechanic. The last thing you want to do is go home and work on your car. You know, it's I'm blind 24/7. I don't necessarily want to play it, you know, in D&D. But I intend to in the near future, just so I have a better idea about how to make it work and everything, so that I can explain it to people, because I get that question a lot. You know, how can they respectfully do it and everything? But yeah, it's that was good, and you know, I've stayed in contact with him some, and the other people, you know, from Wizards, and they're real sensitive to it, and they're working on it very hard.
Good, and that's always a joy to hear. You know, I know a lot of these companies get a lot of slack. I love the guys at D&D. I love the guys at D&D Beyond as well, and girls and non-binary pals. They're all absolutely
they are the best of people.
And you're totally right though. I when I was an engineer, I never used to role play as being an engineer. Now I do. Now it's nostalgic. You know, now I'll role play being an engineer because I don't do it anymore. But for example,
exactly.
You'll rarely find me playing a bard anymore. Because that's my day job.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what is I know you literally just said that you'd like to play more characters to get more information on it, but like, what is the advice that you give to people who do want to play blind characters currently?
The best way to do it is to, in my opinion, is to play somebody that is the same type of person that you would normally play. A hero, you know, somebody that's funny, somebody that's sad, somebody, whatever, that just happens to be blind. You know, you're not the perpetual victim. You're not the weak link in the game. You have strengths. You have abilities that are worth adding to the mix. I personally don't like the idea of like playing a blind character and then canceling it out with the blind side ability. You know, that's really not playing the experience. Like with Greg, I told him to, you know, have like a staff or something that he used to tap ahead of him with, and use a friend in the party to guide off of when, you know, they were moving around and stuff. And well, and if you have a lot of area effect attacks, you know, just have somebody point you in the right direction and let the fireball go. and you're contributing, you know. But you need to have those difficulties to overcome to get the real respectful feel, I think, in it. You know, like the blind character's not going to see the pit trap. So if his friends don't think to warn him, by all means, let the blind character fall into the pit trap. You know, it's that simple. It's just treating them like you would anybody else. You know, if somebody else missed a roll and didn't see the pit trap, you would totally let them fall in.
Yeah.
You know,
I think you're keying into a couple of like key things that like I see come up often. Well, not often, but occasionally on my feed. And the first one is the first one is the playing a character like their disability defines them.
Yes.
You know, like I'm blind, so
Exactly.
that's everything I do is affected by it. Whereas it's just not
Right.
true. You learn to cope.
No.
Right?
And I hate pity more than anything in the world.
Yeah.
I used to, for a while after, when I first went blind, I lost all my sight for about 8 months. And all I did, because there's no help, no one tells you, everybody thinks that when you go blind, a government official shows up with sunglasses and a cane and here you go. And, it took my mother searching for almost a year to find help.
Yeah.
And I just sat around in my room, in a dark room, listening to the NFL Network all day. But then once I got my sight back, got a little bit of my sight back after multiple surgeries and losing an eye, I got into doing things that, I don't know, put me more out there. One of the biggest things was I discovered Critical Role on YouTube.
Uh-huh.
About when they were in the 20th episode or so of the first campaign.
Oh yeah,
and that
amazing.
Yeah, and that spurred me on. I got to watching that, and I watched the YouTube shows until about into the 50th episode, until I caught up and could watch it live. And but that got me. I found out they were on Twitter and were talking about the show. And I had a Twitter account from 2007 that I hadn't used. It had been taken over by somebody selling herbal remedies or something, and spamming. And I went back in and changed the password and took it back over and deleted all that. And I discovered.
Good on you. I would have just deleted it.
Yeah.
Started again.
I don't give up.
Fair.
But I discovered the Twitter TTRPG community. And it's the best place. I know everybody hates on Twitter and about how bad it is and everything, but there are small pockets of awesome on Twitter. And the TTRPG community is totally one of those. I have so many more friends. I'm not sitting in a dark little room by myself anymore, trying to play a video game or just, listening to the television. I'm talking to my friends from all over the world, constantly, every day. Like, that's how I met you and became friends with you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can relate to that myself because, I isolated myself by time zone or by sea. So I can relate to being in a room that's 6 by 8 by 6.
Yeah.
And not really seeing anyone. It's the internet's amazing for that. And you're right. Twitter has its hellish moments, but also has absolute pockets of amazingness.
People have been amazing and so nice and helpful to me.
Yeah.
And what I've tried to accomplish.
So what we're gonna do? We're gonna open up. We've got about probably about 5-10 minutes left. So we're gonna open up chat. Chat, if you've got any questions for this last section, feel free to fire them in and we'll scoop them all up at the end. But the last thing I'm going to ask you about, Temple, and I'm going to loop back to playing a blind character as well, because I think this is another trap people fall into. And I'd like to talk about why it's wrong, but like countering blindness with like the superhero thing, like super hearing or anything like that.
Daredevil, yeah.
Yeah, the Daredevil thing.
Yeah. I feel that it's wrong because it gets rid of the thing that you're trying to overcome. There is no, it takes away all the work and the effort that you have to put in to deal with your blindness, to deal with the everyday slights and the everyday problems that you have that are very valid. And, people should realize how much effort it takes. Now, I don't want to be, I don't like the opposite thing too, of turning people that are blind and just functioning normally in society as superheroes or something. We're just people. I don't want pity porn. I want to be just treated like a normal person that has a difficulty, that overcomes it and moves on in their life. And when you play the Daredevil, and I love Daredevil, the character, but when you play that in a game or something, you're really not giving credit to the people that have to overcome that and work at it every day.
Yeah, I think there's a danger of it becoming a little bit farcical as well.
Yeah,
I remember we so when I was at uni, Daredevil used to be a bit of a meme for us. Like we'd walk into the room and like tap the desk twice and go, "Your drink needs filling up." You know, like it's just
Exactly. Yeah,
ridiculous. You know,
Yeah.
like
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I Can See You When It Rains, like the Ben Affleck
Yeah.
movie. We used to make fun of that movie
Oh
all
yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
Like,
it was a horrible
love the
movie.
character, but like, oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
Well, just a non-blind guy aside, I always loved the Marvel characters that were the low-powered ones.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
the ones that couldn't deflect bullets or, you know, destroy spaceships and stuff. The guys that bullets actually hurt were always the real heroes to me. You know, and Daredevil was a big one of those. You know.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's totally it, right? And like really, Superman. This is just his day job. You know, he's
Yeah,
not.
yeah. He's not risking anything. You know.
Yeah. I see Sphinx is in chat there saying that it sounds like the Daredevil kind of character is pretty much the first character they ever played in a D&D. It was a pre-made character. So I guess that's something else there is
Yeah,
do you find a lot of like tropey stuff in like presets? Do you find that?
No. Usually in preset stuff, I don't run into blind anything. You know, it's it's not there. Well, you don't run into disabilities much in the games unless it's the villain and it's some kind of horrible disfiguring thing, you know, that's being used as a descriptor. You know, it's not an actual functioning part of whoever the person or thing is. I think a lot of the times it's not out of a wish to hide from that or anything. It's just they don't know how to approach it without offending somebody, so they leave it out.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, even right down to like bad guys wear eye patches.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah. I only have one eye. I don't wear an eye patch.
well, that's because you're not a bad guy, obviously.
Yeah, I have a perfectly functioning acrylic eye.
I mean, similarly, monocle is obviously monocle and a top hat is another sure indicator that your character's evil.
Yeah, or own a monopoly.
Yeah, and there's not really any questions in chat. It's just Zort there is saying it's always great to hear you speak, Temple. Your insights into the hobby is always interesting. Much love to us for talking about it.
Oh, thank you.
So much appreciated, you all. Much appreciated. So I think we're gonna wrap up around here. We've got about 10 minutes until our next show, which is about enough time for me to get the scene set up and everything. I've got to say, with just one person in the Zoom call, so much easier to set everything up, everyone. It was really easy. I mean, we still managed to not quite get the web captioner working somehow, but that's on me. But
I don't know. It seems to be working here. I don't know what the deal is.
Yeah, it's probably something to do with the link or something, or the OBS browser, or I don't know. It's probably something my end. I'll try and fix it between the streams.
Yeah, it's
yeah, is there anything you'd like to wrap up? I mean, we can shout out all the things that you shouted out again. That'd be great.
Right.
And yeah, anything that you'd like to say as a closing final note?
Yeah, if you need accessible things, go to the @Knights of Braille, the Knights of Braille, on Twitter.
The Knights of Braille.
Yeah. At Dots RPG. That right there is a great starting point, and they're super helpful. Come and ask me questions. You can DM me and ask me anything, any time of day, and I'll get back to you and let you know. Any kind of question you might have, even if you think it's silly or possibly offensive, the only way that people are going to get better at this is by asking questions and having them answered. And I'm here for that. That's why I'm on Twitter. That's why I do what I do. So ask me. I am a sightling whisperer. I will make you understand.
And you can see Temple playing with us on Thursdays at 6 p.m. EDT. We play the Humblewood campaign. And Temple has helped me numerous times with various sightling issues, accessibility of different tools, and all sorts of things. Very approachable. I thoroughly recommend. Thank you very much for coming and having this chat with us. I think it's very important, and I think what you do is very important, and I appreciate you a whole bunch.
Thank you so much for caring enough to have me do this, because there's so many that don't. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to wrap up here. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for hanging out in chat. Sorry, XMF, you did catch us at the end, but there will be more D&D coming for the rest of today. So we will see you very, very soon. Keep on invoking emotions.
Bye.
Bye.